back in afterwards if that's agreed. Next, thank you, Mr. Downey. Can I now call on Patrick Kent, Chairman, President of ICSA?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank the committee for this opportunity to contribute to the debate on the crisis facing the beef sector at the moment. I think that we must begin by emphasising just how serious this is and what the knock-on implications are for the suckler sector. It's disappointing enough to see a steer price back 13% compared to its peak of last summer. It's a big problem for winter finishers to see price weakening over the costly winter feeding months. However, the real disaster relates to young bull beef price. Young U3 bulls are on average back 21% since last summer in price. However, the average U-grade bull price doesn't even begin to tell the story of how the goalposts have been moved in terms of spec, nor does it tell the story of the immense pressure being put on winter finishers who are being treated with contempt and who can't get cattle killed when they need to. Overnight, the bull over 16 months is apparently no longer wanted. Maximum carcass weight has been reduced in some cases to as low as 380 kilos. Bulls a day over 24 months are worth considerably less than old cows. The impact on the suckler trade is potentially devastating. Suckler farmers producing top-of-the-range continental bull weanlings cannot continue unless there is viable markets for this type of stock. Live exports are vital, but on their own they are not enough. How can we expect Irish finishers to have confidence to bid for €1,000 weanlings when spec are being changed at the drop of a hat? How can a finisher take advantage of grass to grow the bull at a bit of lower cost and then to get these cattle killed at 16 months and at a maximum of 380 kilos and make a profit from it? Especially as U-grade bull beef price in February is a full 25% behind the equivalent Italian price. It's important to emphasise that it is the top quality suckler producer that is most impacted by this. These are the farmers who have invested heavily in breeding growthy, lean continental cattle. These are the suckler farmers who face the challenges of more hard calvings and higher costs. These are the farmers who are barely breaking even at best. I anticipate that the publication by Teagasc of the results for all the profit monitors completed under BTAP will be a real wake-up call. Already we know from our members' anecdotes just how poor suckler returns are when they have completed the profit monitor. It is now clear that the Food Harvest 2020 targets for beef are completely pie in the sky. While it is positive that the Minister has been energetic in developing new international export markets, the reality is that farmers are seeing no benefit from that at present. Farmers feel frustrated that there seems to be no great appreciation of the bull beef crisis. They are paying significant levies on cattle that are slaughtered and asking how this can be afforded in a sector that is showing losses. ICSA has come here today to impress on you that it is a real crisis for the industry that we represent. There is a strong feeling out there that the Minister is not taking it seriously enough. We can hide for the time being behind the overall agri-food exports figures for 2013, but the reality is that 2013 will not be repeated in the beef sector. ICSA wants action on the beef crisis, and I now hand over to ICSA Beef Chairman Edmond Phelan.
Okay, thanks, President. As Beef Chairman, I don't think I can ever recall a time when there's so much pessimism around the beef sector. Farmers are sick of the uncertainty, particularly relating to feeding cattle over the winter. It's all very well saying don't feed bulls to feed steers, but steers are a lot less efficient than bulls at converting feed into carcass weight. It takes a good performance to put a half a kilo of carcass weight a day on a steer. And if that carcass is only worth, or that kilo is only worth €4 and the cost of feeding them is $3.50, it's obvious the winter finishers of steers cannot survive without a price rise over the winter period. It needs to be in the order of 3 cents per kilo per week. Instead, we've seen price drops in 2014. The bigger picture is that beef producers cannot be expected to continually absorb unanticipated losses. Meat processors and retailers have a lot of soul searching to do. Retailers seem to think that they have a right to beef produced at below the cost of production, and processors are happy to collude with this. In addition, the processing industry needs to be held accountable on a number of issues. We have no proper explanation as to how the horse meat scandal happened, nor do we have any sign of political will to punish the guilty. Farmers are sick of the extent to which they are punished for the slightest error. They see the heavy hand of the SIU being used to deal with the most minor of cases on farm, but they seem totally ineffectual when it comes to deliberate misconduct on an international scale, as we saw with the horsemeat scandal. Now it seems the farmers are paying the price for this, as factories blame the horsemeat saga for the greater focus on the bull beef specification. Farmers were misled on bull beef by processors. Less than 2 years ago, we were actively encouraged to buy Holstein bull calves from dairy farmers and told that they would be money made feeding them as bulls. The consequence was a collapse of the veal export trade, and now when these bulls come on market, we're told we have too many bulls and there's no market for them. It's also time to look at anti-competitive practices in the beef trade. In North America, processors are barred from controlling feedlots. Here we have an increased number of feedlots under control of beef processors, which are being utilised to keep a downward pressure on price. Worse still, the fact that the rendering industry is influenced by one dominant player in processing, and it is uncompetitive. It is clear that all these things are impacting on beef price paid to farmers, and the reality that price and spec seems to move in remarkable unison. ICSA believe that it is now time for the government to look at appointing a regulator to the meat processing sector. We have government regulators for all kinds of private business sectors, ranging from banking to telecoms to broadcasting. Regulators reflect the fact that while private enterprise is to be encouraged, it cannot be allowed to operate unfettered and without scrutiny. Such a regulator needs to have power and investigation and real teeth. Moreover, it needs to ensure that there is fair competition in the processing sector and that farmers have real choice when it comes to selling their livestock. The rendering sector needs to separate from processing. It's amazing to see where Ryanair has been prevented from taking over Aer Lingus, but we have no concerns about what's happening in the rendering sector. The government also needs to revisit previous efforts to impose voluntary codes of practice on retailers. Voluntary codes simply don't work. We need to get real. It's not satisfactory for that retailing is being dominated by a few multinationals, but we still have no handle on the breakdown of margins when it comes to farm products such as meat, dairy or vegetables. I want to emphasise that farmers are sick of what is going on. Farmers have bent over backwards to comply with cross-compliance. They went further and signed up in great numbers to Board BIA quality assurance because they were told that it was essential in delivering top-priced markets for Irish meat products. At this point, there's complete frustration with beef quality assurance. It has been manipulated to the extent that some categories of stock are now subject to huge discounts and in some cases unsaleable without the cert, but yet quality assured beef processors derive no benefit whatsoever from it. I'm not advocating it, but a lot of farmers are openly discussing and refusing to participate further in the beef quality assurance scheme, and I can't blame them. The industry is in trouble. Many finishers and suckler farmers are intent on quitting and perhaps rearing dairy replacements on contract. But we need a complete review of what has been achieved by the beef quality assurance scheme. If farmers can't even be assured of some stability at a time when our export markets are reasonably secure, what's the point of it at all? I think that the final straw for some farmers is the fact that the Minister met with the processing sector recently, but it seems to be a complete waste of time. Astonishingly, the Minister didn't even issue a press release on the outcome of the meeting. What does this tell us? I will conclude by urging the committee to do everything in its power to making the beef crisis a key concern of the Minister and the Government, and to push for greater regulation of the processing and retailing sectors, as well as to focus on the anti-competitive elements that we refer to. Thank you, Cahill.
Thank you, gentlemen. I now call Mr. John Comer, President.